And there you go. That is where our failure happened. There we go. Yep. Looks like the gear is sufficiently welded on there. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we're back on Project Black Pearl. We've got a couple of inexpensive Amazon repairs for her today. Both rear window regulators don't work, so I've got a pair of Amazon window regulators, and the hood won't hold itself up, thus the blown shock. So I've also got a pair of hood shocks to replace. Then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna lube up our latches, because a really common failure point on these cars is that the cable will snap because you're putting so much tension on there. So we'll lube the latches, we'll adjust the hood, and I'll show you exactly what happens if those latches break, or better yet, if that cable breaks. While we're inside of the doors, we're also gonna be resealing our vapor barriers. Another common leak spot. The vapor barrier will be loose at the bottom. Water will drip in back underneath the seats and pool up back there. Not a great thing. So we'll take care of that as well. So let's jump right into our hood shocks. To start, I've got one of the shocks off already. This will make it much easier to show you how to get them off. You have a lock at the bottom and a lock at the top here. And this clip is what actually retains the shock to the ball mount there. And the easiest way to get them off is with a small flat blade screwdriver, and you lift this up until you can get it all the way off the front or the back, and you're either going to slide it off one direction or the other. And then just like that. That's really all it takes, just lifting it off enough that the tabs inside here will release. So I've already released the hood latch from inside the car. And one of the things that you want to look for is you want to look to see that it's pushing itself up. That releases your secondary latch here, and that's all happening from our springs underneath and from our two hood adjusters here, lining everything up. Just like that, pop them off. This is a good shock. I can't even compress it, so I'll save this as a spare. Now for installation, you're just going to pop the bottom in, and then you may have to lift the hood a little for the fresh shock. There. That slides in nicely. Snap into place. Oh, geez. Those new shocks are shockingly strong.
Well, apparently, that's supposed to be funny.
So what I'm looking for on the hood is I'm looking for my hood line to line up with my fender on both sides. I can actually feel that the passenger side is lower than the driver's side. So we're going to adjust that. And to adjust, all we have to do is turn our adjustment here. Oh, that's very nice. I know you can't feel it on screen, but these two lines line right up now. Right where they're supposed to be. Now that we've got our hood adjusted, we want to get everything lubricated. We have our two latches, plus our pins and springs, and then our cable connection point where it goes from the interior to the engine bay. And I'm going to start by wiping down my latches with these hand cleaner wipe tub of towels. I've got a link to them down below. These are my favorite shop wipes. These work great to clean up grease and dirt and debris and all those different things. You could probably get in here with some brake clean and stuff, because there's years and years and years of dirt and debris and grime on here. Not to mention, we're also going to add some grease to it when we're done, so we want everything to be able to spin freely, or slide freely in this case. Our towel got quite a bit dirty, or dirtier than it was when it was clean. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some silicone lube. This is slide lube from when I had my RV, but silicone nonetheless will work really well. Lubricates and waterproofs. And I'm going to squirt the outside of our spring perches here. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the backside of our secondary retainer, because that thing doesn't move very well. And then inside of both of our latches, we're going to spray as well. So what I want to do is I want to spray back to where our spring keeper is here on both of these. And then we're going to go inside and we're going to operate the hand pull multiple times. And then we'll come back and we'll lubricate again. Top here, we're gonna use our silicone still. I'm just gonna coat it, catch all our drips. And then we're going to operate the spring and slide mechanism.
Naughty, naughty.
So that we make sure that that lubricant is getting in there. Oh man, that moves so much better. It was so sticky and crunchy before. That makes a tremendous difference. For our hood cable, this is where the inside cable and the outside cables meet up. What tends to happen is this open connection here is not weather tight. So you're gonna get corrosion. Even though this is a stainless cable, you'll get corrosion down inside of it. That corrosion usually leads to a buildup of material that causes it to get stickier. Plus, these have never been lubed, the hood hasn't been properly adjusted, and the cable breaks. Well, a problem with that is if this cable breaks anywhere under the hood and not inside the interior, you're kind of screwed, because you would think maybe you could get to the latch from inside if you broke out the grill, but on the driver's side, there's a little bit of room. On the passenger side, there's less room. And you can't just get to it. There's a bunch of plastic and stuff that you'd have to break out underneath just to get to this little guy to get it to move like that. What I did was I shot some lube up the cable. I operated the cable, shot some more lube in there, just to make sure that this can all move freely. Now, this doesn't mean that it won't break in the future or it can't break, but it's gonna be less likely to break. And on a car that's 20 plus years old, this is really easy maintenance that should have been done many, many, many times. Every inspection service, these are supposed to be lubed. Rarely happens on anybody's car, I'm sure, nowadays. So if you have an E38, E39, these are things you want to address right now. It's simple maintenance like this that prevents huge problems like having to cut a hole in your hood, and will keep these cars on the road for a long time. I know that hood struts and hood latches and stuff like that seems silly, but honestly, let's keep these cars on the road as long as possible. I've already ruined one, why ruin any more? So let's do our window regulators next. So why am I replacing the rear window regulators? Well, on these older cars, especially cars where there are no kids involved, the rear windows don't get exercised all that much. What winds up happening is they get sticky inside the seals here, and then somebody like me comes along who may be interested in buying the car or something like that, and they go, oh, I'd better check all the windows. Do they work? Push the button, that window regulator winds up, and either the cable snaps, which we'll find out when we get in here, or the little plastic tabs snap right off of the window, leaving you with, oh, it started to move, but that must mean that the cable didn't snap, but this little plastic tabs did. So you push the button and it starts to wind up and then it goes. That tells me a lot there. And then it jams. So before I get it stuck any worse, let's get the door open and see what we're dealing with in there. Let's see, we're gonna need a small pick tool to get in here and underneath this little cover. Get this guy off. Looks like it's been broken before, so it was just stuck in there. Oh, the old car problems. Set that in there, and then it's a T20. Our switch, we're gonna use a small flat blade. Gently pry that up. And we're gonna use our pry tool to get back behind here. Gently start releasing the door panel. Work our way around. Pry up to the top of the door, brace the door. Yep, there we go. And then we need to get out of this trim here. We're gonna lift and pull just a little bit. There we go. We're kind of prying up to get around our lock actuator there. There we go. And then our handle is just gonna pop through the door. We got our speaker wire. That just pulls apart. We're gonna pull our switch wire out, down at the bottom, we have one single connection for our little door floodlight. It looks like we got a popped bulb, so we'll replace that too. Now for the fun part, it looks like the door panel unglued itself. We'll have to fix that. Vapor barrier. This barrier has been off before, and you can see here, it's not sticking at all, which is where a lot of leaks come from. That's precisely why we bought extra sealant. We'll disconnect our handle. Somebody's been in here with this extra window weld, but this stuff's crap. We need to put the good stuff in. That's the 3M stuff. This barely has any tack left to it. I can see there's a whole bunch of it all the way around in here. So I'll take some time, peel this out, and then we'll go about it the right way. See down here at the bottom, it's barely even touching at all. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you get your vapor barrier nice and clean so that it's not covered in dust and it will actually stick. The bottom of the door here is where all the problems wind up happening. And what happens is water will run in, drip on the inside of the door, hit the back of the vapor barrier, hit the bottom of the door right here, and drip inside into the car, which is a no-go. Not what we want. This piece of protective plastic here, the fact that it's not broken, tells me that somebody has not been in here to do a window regulator, but somebody has been in here to try and reseal, because this is an inordinate amount of window weld sealant in here. And it's very hard and dry. It should be leaving black trace all over my hands. All right, I'm gonna work on doing some peeling. So here's a look inside the door, and you can see what's happening. See how that cable, oh, piece of plastic just fell. But this cable is loose here. This is where our guide somewhere inside of there has broken. So now we need to get the bolt off down there, and behind that plastic there, we have a bolt. But first, we got to get the glass out of the way, because clearly the glass is going to be blocking access right here. Let's see if we can drive it down a little manually. There we go. Now we have access to the glass. This should be a T30 right here. See that spot right there? That's what's holding our glass to the regulator itself. All right, we got to get that off. I should have just worked it out in the first place. Now, while it's out, we're going to clean all this debris out of there as well. Set it up top for now. Now this piece will peel right off, like that, drop out the bottom. That just gave us access to the 3 screws to pull our exterior trim off. Taking this outside trim will give us the flexibility in the seal to be able to get the glass out. This trim here is behind this one. It needs to slide down in order to come out, which means you're going to scratch the bottom of it if you don't pull this trim up. All of these are a friction fit in here, and when you're trying to peel them, they want to bend. So you have to be really careful as you're peeling them up. Let's see, I'll start by pulling the seal back a little bit. I like to try to get something flat under here. Pry gentle. No sharp edges, if possible. Oh, crap! Well, it got a little round. We'll deal with it. You see, as soon as you get that outside loose, this piece comes right out. Now, watch this. The glass slips right out. Easy peasy. All this trouble makes it really easy to get the window regulator out. So now we just have our T25 at the top here. And at this point, if you drop it, it's okay because it's down inside the door. And down at the bottom, we just have the 10 millimeter, and you don't have to take it off, you just have to loosen them. There's one on either side holding that motor in place. Up. All right, now you have to play the game trying to get this guy out of here. Oh, I see our problem right there. That bad boy let loose. So tilt it back, then bring the motor up, over, and then out the bottom. Right there. And there you go. That is where our failure happened. The exterior cable sheath broke free. Here's the inside. And then this was driving back and forth, not on the gear up top here. That is why our window regulator broke. And you can see on this other side, here's a piece of this retainer. I actually saw another piece of it down inside the door. Here's a piece of the gear wheel. Make sure to get all these pieces out. Okay, we've got our new window regulator here. Looks like there used to be a different stamp on here. They scratched it out and put their own stamp. It looks to be, similar quality. See, it's missing the rubber stoppers here for the outside of the door, these felt pads, so I'll put something on here for that, just so that there's no vibration possibility. This all looks to be about the same as well. Put her together, see how it goes. To get the motor out, our Freedom Birds are flying, so hopefully you can hear me. We just got all these T20s. Got this one stuck here behind the drive mechanism. But once we get it loose, there we go. The motor should pop off. There we go. Yep. Looks like the gear is sufficiently welded on there. Should be able to get that off though.
No, it's not going to be easy.
That's crazy. This whole thing is not doing great. So on this side, there's a little opening where there's grease. It looks like it has been rusted like that for a long time. It's just plastic though. We'll be able to get it off.
Wishful thinking on his part.
We'll just get these cables out of the way. I've got my door panel gluing back together over here. That's not great. You can see all the rust in there. But again, this is plastic. Looks like we have another spot with some foam right there. It was at this point I knew I was kind of in a bind here. You wouldn't think that plastic and steel could weld themselves to each other quite so effectively with that rust, but it sure did. I decided to try to weaken the gear with a drill press there, no go. Then I was hitting it with a diamond wheel, trying to cut it across and see if I could get it to split. Again, no go. Pulled the chisel out. Thing is pretty darn strong. It must be like some sort of reinforced plastic. So I'm using one of these little Dremel drill bit cutting bit things, a rotozip bit. I don't know what it was. But this is what eventually allowed me to get enough momentum on that gear to break it apart and get it off. Now that I've spent, I don't actually know how long trying to get this thing apart, before I put it in the window regulator, I'm going to put it back in the car and see if it works. So some sort of foam would be good to match up on this guy. I don't have any foam. I thought I had some thin foam like that. I do have some weather stripping I picked up at like a garage sale for 10 cents. So what I'll do is I'll just take some strips of this guy. It's a little thicker, so it'll give it some resistance. I'll cut these to length and put these in their place instead. Motor assembly goes in about right here. There are 2 screw links here. The one behind the cable, that's the biggest tapered screw. The other ones are the panhead screws. All right, we've got this guy all reassembled. I have our mounting bolts here in the bottom. These are the guys that are down in the bottom of the door that you have to get it to come up. Let's see, I'm going to push that grease, that little hole there. That way, maybe it'll seal, I don't know. We don't want this thing rusting together like the old one did. And we've got our little bumper stoppers here for whatever those are for. Let's get it in the car and see if we can see why those are on the old regulator. Now, if I remember correctly, to get this guy in, we're going to snake it up this way. And we're going to drop it into the corner over here. There we go. Now we got to bring it around. So we're going to tilt this way. I know it's really hard to see everything in here. Drop it in there, just like that. You didn't really see it, but okay. Down inside the door, that's where our 2 bolt locations are. We're going to tighten those up, and then we're going to mount or put our bolt through there, and then we'll be all fixed in place. This right here is where those foam pads came in. So they are touching the door support, which is going to keep this from rattling on there. Glad I put those in there. With the regulator in place, no noise. We want to operate it down to the bottom here to get our glass installed, because right now the mounting point is somewhere up in here. That will also make it easier to drop the glass down and in. All right, let's see. That's not good. Oh, you need the glass on there to lock this in place. Then it goes up and down, no problem. I think I'll throw just a tiny bit of grease in there as well, because, well, I lube everything up anyhow. To get our glass in, just like taking it out, easy peasy. I'm gonna pull our seal out of the way. Lower it down, and then I'm gonna push her over into our side seal at the B-pillar, and then down onto the reg itself. Then I'll take this side and set the seal in just a little bit, just to hold it in place right there. There we go. We want to slide our glass all the way towards the B-pillar as much as possible, kind of lock it into the seal. And then it doesn't take a lot of force to lock that in place. Now we're set. We can put our outside trim piece in that we already cleaned up, and our other 2 trim pieces on. If you were so inclined, now would be the time to polish this up. So we have to go in just a little bit past its set point. That way we can drop it in for the seal, slide it up, and then feed our seal into it. Make sure that the glass is still in the correct spot. Then we'll put our 3 screws in from the back. Now we can put our trim piece in on this side first. The seal has this nice little groove in it that locks in to the trim piece. This piece locks up into the trim up top as well. So what I like to do is I like to start on the seal itself and then wrap this way and click it into place like that. It goes in pretty nice and tight. Now let's try our window. That works nice. The inside trim piece has these clips that are opening on the back side here. This piece right here is what's actually locking in to the door. And on the door, there are recesses where you can see that that trim piece locks into place. From the bottom, under here, you can see if you're getting them in the right spot. So I like to start at the front here and just start getting them one at a time locked into place. Oh, that one missed. So sometimes you have to back up. Your fist is a sufficient hammer. You don't need anything stronger than that. On the outside, I like to start at the front. Just like taking it off, reverse order. Slide it right up to the edge of the door. And then we're just gonna slowly start working it down. You can see there's a little bit of twist from peeling it off. This is something you have to fight with. Make sure that we're lined up on our trim piece here. Even though it bent trying to take it off, it still went back on and is nice and flush. Now, before we start sealing up the door, we want to make sure that everything goes up and down nice and smooth. So I'm going to use the switch, and on the door itself, over here you have your door switch. You have to push that in order for the automatic function to work. So we'll push that in. Up and down nicely. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and get our vapor barrier sealed up. And to do that, we're going to need a heat gun and some new 3N window weld ribbon sealer. I'll have links to all this stuff down below. I don't like to have any gaps on the bottom, preferably, because, well, that's where the water is going to drip into the car. So I start my window seal up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm the metal before I try to attach it. And then I'm going to warm it some more once I put it on there and get everything smushed into place nicely. So I'm going to stretch this a little bit as I'm installing it. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to heat it. And I'm going to do the same thing when I put the vapor barrier on, is I'm going to heat and stick, heat and stick. So on our vapor barrier, I went ahead and I acetone cleaned the whole backside where our contact surface is. I just went around and heated up all of our sticky, and we're going to get our stuff pushed back in here. Don't forget your door pull. And if your vapor barrier is all torn up, a little bit of duct tape will go a long way with this guy. If you can't find a good one at a junkyard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to press everything together. Then I'm going to come around and I'm going to heat it and do this some more. But the next round I'm going to get a roller so that I can really get some pressure on it. All right, door panels on. We wrapped some of the window sealant around each one of these little pins so that as it goes up against the door, it's going to seal that opening. Originally, these came with a little foam rubber gasket on each one of the little clips. Those disappear whenever these doors come apart. So using the window weld sealant works really well for those. Plus, it gives it a nice solid attachment. I went ahead and I cleaned all the leather as well with some Lexol. It goes on really shiny, but it finishes with a nice soft matte finish that really does look nice. I hate a shiny leather interior. This doesn't feel shiny at all, or look shiny. It's not sticky. That's the important part. Now with everything back together, our last step before we walk away is push the latch in on the door and make sure our window goes up nicely. That's all we could really ask for in this instance. Make sure as you're putting the panel on that you route your cable up and through. Get your latch here connected all the way in the back. Don't forget your light down on the bottom. In my case, I had to re-glue this bin on down here. I had to re-glue this top portion up here. I used a combination of contact adhesive and hot glue to hold everything together. Seems to be working. Now that everything's back together, it should hold itself in place, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and get that other side done, and then we'll wrap up with how much all this has cost for today. So, yeah, what happens when the regulator is so jammed up you can't lower the window to take it off of the regulator? See, in this case, put the switch in. When you try to lower it, the cable just jams up in there, and you can see it gets totally loose because down inside the gear, it's all messed up. So the window won't go up and down. So my solution for that, these guys here. We're just gonna cut both sides of the cable. The window's not gonna fall, usually. Like that. Now, it should be free, albeit very stuck. To push it down, now we can disconnect the window from the regulator. This didn't happen on the other side. I was able to drive it down. So I thought this was one of those good gotcha moments that didn't happen over there that might happen to you. That would be the easiest way to get this thing to move, is just cut those cables. Well, this could be why this window was so jammed up. The seal had rolled over. That's problematic. Let me see if I can fix this with some heat. So a lot has occurred since I started this project, or I started filming for the window regulators. I have acquired a large sum of parts, including a couple of cool parts that I picked up at a junkyard, like an M Sport headliner, which I was very surprised to find intact. What I believe happened was whoever got to that car before me didn't know that you had to pull the sunroof glass in order to get the headliner out. They tried, but they couldn't figure it out. I came along, it was still intact. All the handles and the mirrors and the sun visors and lights and all of the black trim, it was all gone. But the slider and the headliner was in place, as well as the valve covers on the motor, which I snagged as well. I've got a bunch of parts lined up for this guy, and I'm really excited to get going further into it. But for now, we have finished our window regulators, bam, and our hood struts. So let's talk about money, because that's what everybody's really the most interested in. In this repair, I bought my window regulators off of Amazon. They were $61.82. Hood struts, same story, $20.60. The epoxy to put my door panels back together was $11.25. And the 3M window weld was probably the most expensive component in this whole thing, was $31.53 as far as a singular component. However, I have washed the car since I started this project, and I left the door panel on the driver's side off just so I could make sure to verify the repair and the effectiveness of the seal. No water whatsoever. I'm very happy with that. So our total at this point, $4,264.51 invested into this vehicle, including purchase price. Now, I will be honest with you, I've already spent an additional $3,000 in parts on my workbench back there, plus a bunch of parts that I'm going to scavenge that I've been saving from the M5. Not that they were gonna go back on the M5, but they're from the M5, which I'm pretty happy about because a bunch of them are harder to find parts. So, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. See you later.